Hi everyone, my name is Penny. I am a martial artist, astrologer, and mother. I make vlogs every Sunday in addition to the astrology and numerology videos on my channel. Now, what I want to talk to you today is about my first experience competing in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So, I've talked a lot through Facebook and here on my YouTube channel about overcoming fears, especially emotional fears, because I think that is the number one fear most of us face in our society today. A lot of what we're afraid of is our own feelings and, consequences of what happened and how those consequences will make us feel internally. We're afraid of things like rejection, heartbreak, not feeling good about ourselves, disappointment, all that kind of stuff. It's really scary for us. And that's kind of been one of my number one goals in life, to overcome fear wherever I find it. And the reason I decided this from the age of 12 is because I realized that people were controlling each other through fear. And a lot of times it's bad people with bad intentions who want to take advantage of others and control them through fear. Now that's pretty awful, and I knew that was something I always wanted to avoid. But what's even worse, and what I've noticed further into adulthood, is that sometimes it's not even another person that's using our fears to control us. Sometimes it's just the fear itself that controls us. And the fear forms this sort of entity. It's not even a living, breathing human. It's not even an animal. It's not a plant. It's not a living thing. It doesn't have real desires. It doesn't have real goals or intentions or ambitions or anything. It's just this force that controls us for absolutely no reason, which is even worse because then we limit ourselves in life. So I've always looked to overcome those fears, and I've been encouraging people who watch my channel to do the same, which is part of the reason why I'm sharing this story and part of the reason why I embarked on this journey in the first place. So I decided to compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ultimately because I realized that I was afraid to do it. I've been a martial artist for 6 years. I started with Taekwondo and Hapkido in Plano, Texas, and I've pursued a variety of styles since then. I more recently started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I had never competed in any of them. I had kind of, fantasized about competing sometimes, and the fantasy, it's very romantic. I enjoyed indulging in that fantasy of competing and playing around with it in my head, but I had never actually gotten to the point where I had done it, and I usually find some reason to talk myself out of it. Obviously there's risk of injury, which is the big one, physical injury, and there's no way around that. If you're going to compete in a combat sport, there's a chance you will get physically injured and it might impact your life from there. And especially as a single mom, I had a lot of guilt about doing that. But then even when I look beyond that, there's all these kind of emotional fears like, oh my gosh, if I lose, how am I going to feel about myself? What are other people going to think of me? More importantly, what am I going to think of myself? And then if I win, is it just going to go to my head? Is it this, kind of shallow, ego inflating experience? I don't want the gratification of my ego to be my motivation for something, because that's a little bit sick. That's not healthy. That's not a good spiritual path to be on. And it's a dangerous path too, because then you can have these high ups and these low lows, and you can fall right down from the pedestal. So we shouldn't let the gratification of our ego be a motivating factor. And I had to overcome all of these things in order to decide to compete. And even the weekend before competing, I had a little bit of a meltdown. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so many people use this for ego gratification. Am I one of those people? Is that all this is? And, I decided I didn't want to be a part of that. And when I decided I didn't want to be a part of that, that didn't make me decide that I didn't want to compete. Because I realized that doesn't have to be my reason for competing. I can compete for other reasons. And my primary reason was overcoming fear and pushing my own boundaries and seeing what's on the other side after I compete. I knew it was a spiritual growth. And I didn't know if I was going to come out of it with a broken arm. I didn't know if I was going to come out of it with the guilt of having to have broken someone else's arm or having injured someone else. I was worried about how that would feel as well. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if anyone was going to get hurt. I didn't know if I was going to be the person who was going to get hurt or if I was going to end up hurting someone else. And both those realities are difficult to accept. They are big risks in life. I definitely have a conscience, and I felt like I would feel bad if I hurt someone. But I know we kind of get into the sport and we know that's a possibility. That's just something that we have to accept. But the one thing I did know for sure coming into this is that facing something that scares me this much is going to be a life-changing experience. And what I was essentially going to face is the death of that fear, which is the death of a part of me. And it's a spiritual awakening process, and that something different would come from it. There would be some big turning point. Now, as I was preparing for the tournament, I had this stuff going on in my head, almost like I was just focused on how this was going to be an ending. And I think, part of me was thinking, oh, it's either going to be, the end of my fantasy that I will, win a gold medal or whatever, become this amazing, renowned competitor. So maybe it'll be the end of that fantasy. Or maybe it'll be the end of my suffering. Maybe I'll finally, feel like people value me. Maybe I'll feel like I have my happily ever after. Maybe I'll feel like I proved people wrong for thinking that I was disposable or that I could just be disregarded. And there's many people in my life who've made me feel unimportant and disposable and like I wasn't worth investing in. So I know that was something kind of going on and boiling beneath the surface of me psychologically as I prepared to compete. And maybe it's not like that for everyone, but for a lot of people who've been through a lot of really traumatic or upsetting things in life, I'm sure that is part of it. So I had to accept, even though this is something that has impacted my life so much, this emotional insecurity, that still can't really be my reason for competing. But I still came into this kind of thinking that it was going to be like an ending. And what I know from being a spiritual worker is that endings are also beginnings. But for some reason, that wasn't clicking for me. When I'm stuck here inside my own life and I can't see things as clearly, we all kind of get like that. We get tunnel vision in our own lives. And that's why it helps to see from someone else's perspective when we get like this. But I had tunnel vision, and I was thinking this was going to be an ending. And it was an end of my fear and an end of something that has held me back in life. But what I wasn't thinking of was that it was going to be a beginning. And after I competed, I think even after the first girl I wrestled, I immediately started to feel that it was a beginning. And I felt things blossoming from inside me and from within my emotions. I had emotional blossoms. And that's how I felt, even though I went into this thing that was so scary, that it's a combat sport and, it's two people who have the intention and agreement that if we get the opportunity, either one of us is going to injure the other until the ref stops the fight. So that is how I ended up feeling. And I got silver in no-gi. So what this means is that I lost to one other woman, and in gi, I got bronze. So this means that I lost to two other women. So there are two women in Brazilian jiu-jitsu in my division, with my ranking, with my skill level, and of my body weight, that are better than me in this area. Two amazing women who are better than me, who managed to whoop my butt. And I honestly could not feel better about that. because it was just such an eye-opening experience. You know, especially as a female, we're always taught as women that women are weak. Women aren't as tough as men. And then I've been a martial artist for 6 years. A lot of people are relatively impressed with my skill level in some way. I at least have the discipline to have continued being a martial artist for all this time. A lot of people think I'm tough. And I'm still very flattered to hear that because in my head there was a part of me that still kind of thought I wasn't. But then I meet these women who, at least in this way, are tougher than me. And that was really inspiring. You know, it shows me that I have all this room to grow, and it's inspiring. It gives me something to amount to, something to compete with further. And I could not be happier with that. Like, honestly, I don't think I would have been happier to have won gold than I was to get silver and bronze. Because maybe if I had gotten gold, it would have felt like the ending in some way, you know, at least the end of me being a white belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, because I'm like, okay, well, I've surpassed all these people. But now I see that there's still women who are better than me, who are stronger than me, despite what I may have thought beforehand. And in my opinion, that's really great. That's empowering. That makes me feel good. That makes me feel like the standards for women and our strength and our ability are being raised. The bar is being raised even right before my eyes. You know, I see all this stuff on UFC. I can watch boxing. Women's boxing isn't usually on TV, but I can catch the fights elsewhere. I usually end up having to catch them online. But I can watch this stuff, but to actually experience it and be a part of it and be like, wow, this is happening right before my eyes, and see kind of how close this movement is to me and how tangible it is and how I still have further to go and there's nothing stopping me from going there. That was an eye-opening experience, and I felt like it was a revolution within me, and I immediately started changing my behavior even before the competition, leading up to it, but then after. I've decided to become more disciplined, more dedicated, and I'm thinking about competing again. Most likely I will compete again in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but also considering maybe MMA, maybe boxing, maybe I'll work up to some of that stuff. I mean, I'm not making any guarantees right now in this video, because essentially I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. If I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. So if Penny changes her mind, then Penny changes her mind. But right now, it is something I'm considering a little bit more. But even so, what I think is more important than necessarily which route we decide to take in life, you know, whether we decide to become musicians or artists or martial artists or businessmen or businesswomen, whether we decide to be the CEO of our own company, or we decide to be artists or what have you, whichever route you take, what's most important is that you allow yourself to grow spiritually and emotionally. You push your boundaries, you strive to improve, you strive to be the best that you can. And I think competing in this competition helped me do that. So that's kind of a message I want to send to everyone, no matter what your passion is. Go ahead and do it, pursue it wholeheartedly, and always push yourself further. And I'd like to become more like a machine. I think I've let myself be a little bit too dragged down by a lot of things, and I think especially losing to two women in this competition, I think that helped me psychologically a lot, because I was able to lose in front of other people, to have other people see me lose and know how that feels, to be able to walk away from it and say, so what? So what? Room full of people just saw me lose. I don't care. It's okay. It's okay with me, and I feel empowered by that. So it helped me accept other things in life as well. And I'm happy about that. On a more personal note, I absolutely adored the women I competed against. I mean, like, I barely knew them, but it was the biggest experience of deja vu I've ever had in my entire life. There were at least four women there who I swear I have seen before. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've looked you in the eyes before, and I've had this conversation with you before. Um, and I've watched you stand over there. It's like everything about it felt like there was so much deja vu going on, but I knew, especially since I just moved here from Texas, like there's no way I've met these women before. Like none of it was adding up. I haven't actually met them before in reality, but I think that that strong experience of deja vu kind of shows like what a big experience this was for me. And I was just like I came into it like a little bit nervous, and I was actually more nervous in the days leading up to the fight than the actual day of the fight. But um, it was such a big spiritual experience for me, and I think that's why I had so much deja vu. And I think it's almost kind of funny because I feel like the two women I lost to, they kind of had the same attitude about it as me. Um, I would be interested to know their like astrological placements later at some point, but it was just this funny thing, especially like the first woman I fought against. Um, her and I were talking afterwards, and we were immediately like, oh my God, you're so strong. You're so strong. Your game is amazing. And we were just like talking to each other, and the ref was trying to get us to move along. He's like, "Oh my gosh, why do women do this? Like, can you get off the mat? We have something else to do." And we were like trying to hug each other, and we like would stop talking. And then we went over and we got our medals and everything. And then when the three of us met up to get the bronze and the silver and the gold medals, it was like the same thing all over again. It's like, oh my God, you're so amazing. No, you're amazing. Like, oh my God, you're so strong. I can't believe it. I think we were all like a little bit high from adrenaline or something as well, because we were all just like talking about how amazing we all were, and like hugging each other and stuff. So that was a really nice experience too. And the photos of me posing on the podium with the two women I lost to will be on Naga's website later, so hopefully I'll get to look at those. I probably look ridiculous and my hair's probably a mess, but that's okay, because ultimately how we're feeling is more important than how we look. But it's still good to look nice because we're kind of playing the game. Anyway, this turned out to be kind of rambly, but thank you for sticking with me and listening to what I had to say about this. And I hope you too will strive to overcome the fears in your life. And leave a comment below letting me know what you thought of this video, how you can relate to it, what are some of your own personal experiences. Have you ever competed in a martial art? Have you ever competed in a music festival or speech tournament or anything like that? What kind of competitions have you done? Leave it in the comments below, and hopefully I will see you next Sunday for my next vlog and for my astrology and numerology videos as well. Bye guys.